Donald Trump, the multi-millionaire real estate developer, is sounding more like a politician these days than America's most grandiose and controversial builder. When he disagrees with a matter of policy, he does it in a big way. Today, he sunk $95,000 into a full-page newspaper ad appearing in many papers criticizing the administration's foreign policy. Rumblings in the Trump camp point as far as the presidency. Could the Manhattan magnate be eyeing the White House, or is he just calling a bluff? Are you a Republican, Donald?
I'm a Republican, yes.
So if there were politics, it would be as a Republican?
It would be, I guess, as a Republican, but I don't see that there will be politics.
Why the ad, then? I mean, you said you wanted to say it. There's a lot of ways you can say things. I guess an ad is one way. You could have called up shows like this who would have been trying to have you come on. Why now?
Well, it was very easy. I was tired, and I think a lot of people are tired of watching other countries ripping off the United States. This is a great country. They laugh at us. Behind our backs, they laugh at us because of our own stupidity and the leaders. I mean, what we have a Persian Gulf situation. You saw what happened today. Billions and billions of dollars are being spent on getting oil for Japan, and they're not paying anything for it. Essentially, they're paying nothing for it. We have tankers going back and forth that our men are protecting, losing their lives. I mean, they're losing their lives, Larry. We're spending billions and billions on protection, and those tankers are going over to Japan. It's just preposterous. I watched the Kuwaiti oil minister the other day laughing as he was explaining how much money they intend to make with the Bridgeton, which has been a total disaster, the Bridgeton. And I said to myself, isn't that a shame? He's talking about how much money they're going to make, and here we are. He's smiling and laughing. Why don't we get some of it? Why is it that we're protecting? We have frogmen, we have helicopters, we have aircraft carriers, and all sorts of ships all over the Persian Gulf, so that this man and his little group can make a lot of money. I think it's ridiculous.
Well, one of the reasons we say we're doing it is because we've been doing it, and that all previous presidents have endorsed doing it. I guess the kind of thinking of an entrepreneur is because somebody else said it was right doesn't make it right, right?
Larry, the country is losing $200 billion a year. $200 billion. This country cannot continue to lose $200 billion. Japan is one of the wealthiest machines ever created. Saudi Arabia, and it's not, hey, let me tell you, I'm a big beneficiary of Japan. They buy my apartments in spades. They're fine people, but they're laughing to themselves as to what's happening over here. We're not kidding ourselves. They're laughing to themselves, Larry, as to what's happening with this country.
But Donald, a lot of people feel the way you feel, and a lot of people maybe with as much money, or certainly some people with as much money feel the way you feel. Why did you go public?
Because somebody had to, Larry. I watch it again, and it's a very important point. Japan is a money machine. Saudi Arabia is a money machine. Kuwait, these are money machines, the greatest ever created. The United States is, if it were a corporation, it would be bankrupt. It's losing $200 billion a year. For years now it's been losing that. What right do we have to go out and defend? Why aren't these countries, these wealthy money machines, paying us for the defense of their freedom and their nations? Why aren't they paying us?
We are kind of the world's keeper, are we not?
I don't believe we should be. I think Japan should certainly make a contribution. Japan is one of the reasons they're so successful is they don't have to worry about defense, because why should they worry about defense when the United States will do it for nothing? I mean, it's crazy.
Why don't, there are some who said this, why don't people like you, you and people like you, build low-income, medium-income housing?
Well, as far as building housing is concerned, and low-income housing, I've built a lot of it. I haven't recently, but I've built a lot of it. I built senior citizens housing and beautiful, beautiful housing. I built low-income housing, and I'm very proud of it. The policies of the government right now just don't allow it, because really what's happened by the tax incentives that were taken away and by the lack of federal programs. You used to have federal programs, you don't have them anymore. And it really doesn't allow it to be done on any economic basis. And it's a pretty rough situation. I mean, you just don't have subsidized housing, low-income, moderate-income housing, and it's a really big problem.
And if they did, you would do it?
I would absolutely love to do it. I'd be honored to do it. I used to do it. I mean, people think of me in terms of Trump Tower and all the other jobs. I'm just as proud. I mean, you folks don't talk about it because maybe it's not as interesting to some people. I am, frankly, just as proud of all the low-income and the senior citizen housing I built.
Our guest, the famed developer Donald Trump of New York. We're ready to go to your phone calls. Redlands, California. Hello.
Hello, sir. Comment and a couple of quick questions. I think it would be really a big mistake for the United States to attempt to tax its allies for protection, because that would demote them to the role of a client state of the United States. And secondly, I think it'd also be pretty unconstitutional because the Congress has the authority to raise armies and support them with taxes for the defense of the United States, not to be hired out as a mercenary force.
All right, Donald.
Well, number one, it wouldn't at all be unconstitutional. And number two, if you're talking about taxing, I'm not talking about taxing. I think that people should make a contribution, and a major contribution, other countries, to this country for what we're doing to keep their freedom and to keep them free and to allow them to be free. And would you rather have that, or would you rather see this country to go totally bust in another couple of years because this country cannot afford to defend Japan and every other country in the world? It just cannot afford it.
It wouldn't be a tax. It would be more a payment in kind, like for landing space at airports, right?
It would be, you could call it anything you want.
Yeah.
To be perfectly honest, I don't care what it's called, but I think that Japan and all of these other countries should certainly pay. They can well afford to pay.
Donald Trump's our guest. This is Larry King Live. We go to Toronto. Hello.
Yes, good evening, Larry. My
Hi.
question for Mr. Trump, it's a two-part question relating to international trade. Is the solution to the American trade deficit to restrict trade through protectionist policies, or to train American business to be more aggressive and entrepreneurial? And I'd also like to know if Mr. Trump would support a Canadian-U.S. free trade agreement.
Well, I think, just to answer your first part, I believe it's very important that you have free trade. But we don't have free trade right now, because if you want to go to Japan or if you want to go to Saudi Arabia or various other countries, it's virtually impossible for an American to do business in those countries. Virtually impossible. And I have many friends, they go over to Japan. They can't open up anything. They need approvals, they need this, that. In the meantime, Japan comes over to this country, they're buying up Wall Street, they're buying up all of Manhattan's real estate, they're buying, which is fine as far as I'm concerned, because they're paying premium prices that put people like myself in a very good position if I ever want to sell something. So the fact is that you don't have free trade. We think of it as free trade, but you right now don't have free trade. And I support anything having to do with Canada because I think they've been one hell of a good ally.
Lowell, Massachusetts, for Donald Trump. Hello.
Yes, hello, Larry.
Hi.
Donald, first of all, I want to commend your stand in regards to the other nations should take part in the expense of helping the Persian Gulf.
Thank
But my
you.
question to you is the following. You are a very wealthy man and have many contacts. Why can't you do more for the hungry and the homeless in New York?
Well, I
Thank
think it's a very good question, and I'd like to. The problem that you have, and you have a major problem, the problem that you have is it's such a big, big dilemma. You really need federal government assistance, not even city government. The city governments have to be competent, capable, etc. But you really need the federal government to step in. That's why it bothers me so much that when we give this kind of money to the wealthiest countries in the world, and yet for our own people, the homeless, the sick, the poor, the farmers, who are really going through hell right now, those people we're not helping. And why should we? I think it's ridiculous. And this country shouldn't be raising taxes. We ought to be lowering taxes. We should have a surplus, not a deficit. Because the kind of money that I'm talking about, and you can call them, as the gentleman before said, you can call it a tax, you can call it whatever you want to call it, but those countries should be paying us major billions of dollars, and you won't have any deficits whatsoever, and then we'll be able to help the poor and the sick and the homeless and the farmers and everybody else.
West Patterson, New Jersey. Hello.
Hello, I'd like to, hi Larry, I want to ask Mr. Trump a question about the Japanese, and if they keep on buying up all the real estate in Hawaii and in New York, won't it come to a point where they will be dictating our policy and we'll be afraid to move against them? I think it's almost to that point now, isn't it?
There's a book out, Don, that says that already exists, that Japan is, in a sense, wielding the rope with us.
I believe it already is true to a large extent, and there's no reason for it to be. If we had the right people, if we had the right people with the right instincts and business ability, there'd be no way that that could happen. And that's why I hate to see what I see. By the way, I like the Japanese very much. I do tremendous amounts of business with them. They do very well as far as I'm concerned. A man just bought a $21 million apartment in one of the buildings I own.
A what?
A $21 million. He bought 7 apartments, a Japanese man. Wonderful man. He bought 7 apartments, put them together. He's building a $21 million apartment. That's without the cost of construction, by the way. Plenty of money. I like them very much, but they laugh at us. They're laughing at this country and the way the country is being managed. And they should be laughing.
Okay, Ocean City, New Jersey. Hello.
The question is, I've always felt that NATO and West Germany, I mean, we have all those troops over there. I feel that they should pay their way. And then my second question is, and I'll hang up, is what other topic is near and dear to his heart? Thank you.
Okay.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate it. And I agree with you on NATO. I agree with you on other countries. I don't want to single out Japan. I don't want to single out Saudi Arabia, but these are countries that people understand the kind of wealth we're talking about, and I will single them out. But there are many other countries and taking tremendous advantage of this, including NATO. If you look at the payments that we're making to NATO, they're totally disproportionate with everybody else's, and it's ridiculous. As far as other causes that are near and dear, this is the cause, because if we can solve this, then we're able to take care of something that I consider to be ultimately of ultimate importance, and that is the homeless situation, that is the farmers, that is the sick. We don't have any money. This country is busted. And it's busted because we're doing things that we shouldn't be doing. If we had business ability in this country, we'd be making lots of profit, so-called surplus profit. And that profit, that money, could be going to defend and I literally mean defend our homeless and our poor and our sick and our farmers. And that's where we ought to be spending the money, not giving it to countries that don't give a damn for us to start off with.
Give me a development forecast for the rest of the 80s, good or bad, for buildings.
I think it's going to be good in New York City. It's been bad in a lot of other places. It's going to get bad unless we do something about this horrible, horrendous deficit. You cannot continue to lose $200 billion a year. It's going to be so bad that people will never, I really believe this could be much, much worse, unfortunately, than recession. This could be the step beyond. I hate to use the word depression, but if we don't solve the $200 billion a year loss, which is exactly what we have, this country is going to have some very, very serious problem in the early 1990s.
You took out a full-page ad in major U.S. newspapers last year criticizing U.S. foreign policy. What would you do differently, Donald?
I'd make our allies, forgetting about the enemies you can't talk to so easily, I'd make our allies pay their fair share. We're a debtor nation. Something's going to happen over the next number of years with this country, because you can't keep going on losing $200 billion, and yet we let Japan come in and dump everything right into our markets and everything. It's not free trade. If you ever go to Japan right now and try to sell something, forget about it, Oprah. Just forget about it. It's almost impossible. They don't have laws against it. They just make it impossible. They come over here, they sell their cars, their VCRs, they knock the hell out of our companies. And hey, I have tremendous respect for the Japanese people. I mean, you can respect somebody that's beating the hell out of you, but they are beating the hell out of this country. Kuwait, they live like kings. The poorest person in Kuwait, they live like kings. And yet they're not paying. We make it possible for them to sell their oil. Why aren't they paying us 25% of what they're making? It's a joke.
This sounds like political presidential talk to me, and I know people have talked to you about whether or not you want to run. Would you ever?
Probably not, but I do get tired of seeing the country ripped off.
Why would you not?
I just don't think I really have the inclination to do it. I love what I'm doing. I really like it.
Also, it doesn't pay as well.
No, it doesn't. But, you know, I just probably wouldn't do it, Oprah. I probably wouldn't, but I do get tired of seeing what's happening with this country. And if it got so bad, I would never want to rule it out totally, because I really am tired of seeing what's happening with this country, how we're really making other people live like kings, and we're not.
What do you think of this year's presidential race, the way it's shaping up?
Well, it's going to be very interesting. I think that probably George Bush has an advantage in terms of the election. I think that probably people would say that he's got like that little edge in terms of the incumbency, et cetera, et cetera. But I think Jesse Jackson's done himself very proud. I think Michael Dukakis has done one hell of a job. And George Bush has done a hell of a job. You know, they all went in there sort of as semi-underdogs, including George Bush, and they've all come out. I think people that are around all three of those candidates can be very proud of the jobs they've done.
You've said, though, that if you did run for president, you believe you'd win.
Well, I don't know. I think I'd win. I tell you what, I wouldn't go in to lose. I've never gone in to lose in my life. And if I did decide to do it, I think I'd be inclined, I would say that I would have a hell of a chance of winning, because I think people, I don't know how your audience feels, but I think people are tired of seeing the United States ripped off. And I can't promise you everything, but I can tell you one thing, this country would make one hell of a lot of money from those people that for 25 years have taken advantage. It wouldn't be the way it's been, believe me.
As you know, you're the Fat Cat developer, and you know the book on you is that you throw little old ladies who can't afford to rent out of the apartment.
I don't think that's the book on me, if you want to know.
Well, certainly
I don't think it is at all. I think probably it's just the opposite. We have very wealthy people in this particular building. We have a building on 100 Central Park South, probably the best piece of real estate in New York in the world. And we have very wealthy people, extremely wealthy people living in this building.
Well,
they have second homes.
It's not quite accurate to say that every occupant is an extremely wealthy
person. No, but the ones that were complaining were the wealthy ones. The ones that were complaining, Phil, were the wealthy ones. These are people with a lot of money. One of them owns a brownstone, a number of brownstones on East 66th Street, and yet she's living in this building for a rent-controlled rent. The rent-controlled people, the people that need rent control, they're not the ones that are protected. It's people that are usually wealthy with a lot of influence that have the connections to get a rent-control apartment. People that might need it, they don't have rent-control apartments.
The idea of settling drove me crazy. The fact was that we did rent to blacks in our buildings. What we didn't do was rent to welfare cases, white or black. I'd watched what happened when the government came after Samuel LaFrac, another builder, and he caved in and started taking welfare cases. They virtually ruined his buildings. Shouldn't we have just a little more understanding from a man of your influence and wealth on the issue of making New York livable for all of us, safety on the subway? If the answer is absolutely, then we can't continue to give you guys these big tax breaks, and that would go for General Electric and NBC too. You tell us in your own book that you would make money on the Trump Tower in New York,
but when everybody else
without the tax breaks.
So when everybody else in the city gets it but Donald Trump, when Koch and the administration tries to stop Donald Trump, and I don't say give me the tax breaks, I say don't give everyone else the tax breaks. If every other building being built in New York City is entitled to a residential tax abatement, and Trump Tower goes, and I'm not entitled, I'm the only building in the city of New York that's not entitled, I don't think that's appropriate.
Look at the location of your building.
What difference does it make? There are other wonderful locations. Phil, there are other wonderful locations also that are also getting tax abatements. I won the case. They didn't give it to me. It took me 2.5 years in court. I won it 7-0 in 3 different courts, and I'm very happy about it. I didn't win it because I so much needed it as much as because on a moral principle I was entitled to it. If nobody's going to get it, I'm satisfied. If everybody's going to get it, I shouldn't be the only one that's not getting it, Phil. And I know you well enough to know that you wouldn't take it either. If you were in my position, you wouldn't take that. So that's what happened.
Hey, let's hear it for the rich folks. But you tell us also in your book, you left Queens and you left Brooklyn for Manhattan to get away from rent control. You're honest to tell us in this book.
No, I'm honest. Hey, I'm not running for anything, Phil. I'm not running for office. I don't have to lie in a book. I want to tell the facts, okay? I mean, do you want me to say little fibs and little this and little that and how much we all love rent control and what a great thing it's been for New York? It's been a disaster for New York. It's badly hurt New York. It's crippled New York. It's made it impossible for a lot of people to live in New York. And you see what's happening. You look at the Bronx. You look at certain parts of Queens and Brooklyn. You see what rent control's done. And I think you know it as well as anybody else. Rent control, and I'm one of the few developers in the world that would ever say it, some forms of rent control are sometimes necessary to protect the elderly, to protect people that truly don't have the money. But when you have multimillionaires, and not all instances of this, Phil, there's not all instances, but you go to Manhattan, the prime sections of Manhattan, where you have rent control and rent stabilization all over. Those are wealthy people in many instances, and I don't mean in every instance, Phil, but I mean in many, and I would say in a majority. You have multi-millionaires in some cases living in apartments for $200, $300, and $500 a month that should be paying many times. This is going to sound a little unusual, but New York rents can be $10,000 and $20,000 a month. What does that mean? What does that mean, Phil? That means that the city can't tax because if a wealthy person's paying $300 a month, you can't really tax that beyond a certain point, 20% of that or whatever it might be. So the city's always short of funds. It's a joke what's happened. And the people that need rent control, and there are some indeed, those aren't the people that have it. It's the people with the connections. Somebody knows Trump. Somebody knows somebody else. They call up. They say, do me a favor. That's what it's all about.
Let's grant a given. No doubt about it. Under rent control circumstances, there are going to be certain people who don't need it who get it. Not unlike Social Security. There are going to be some people who get it who don't need it. But to suggest that rent control is somehow being pervasively abused throughout the island of Manhattan by people who don't need it, I do have plenty of doubt.
Well, you ought to check the numbers, Phil. I mean, I can tell you something. Now, one little thing. All I'm asking for is a simple thing. Give a means test. If a person makes $150,000 a year working in a big advertising agency, if a person makes $200,000, $300,000, $100,000, $75,000 a year, let there be a means test so that person will give the apartment to somebody that can afford it if you have to do that, Phil. Why can't there be a means test? Why should multimillionaires live for $300 or $400 a month when poor people are paying more than that and have to pay more.
And how many people?
You wouldn't.
It isn't that simple. Just to, and what
you
about
know the kind of money you're talking about? If you emptied and made available to people that that need really this protection, the apartments occupied by very wealthy people in New York, you're talking about tremendous amounts of money. And I mean, if you're talking about a number of accountants in order to administrate a program, you're not talking about a lot relative to what we're talking.
You keep saying you're not running for office, but why don't you run for mayor of New York?
No, I wouldn't want to run for mayor of New York. I'd like to see somebody talented do that, and there's a tremendous potential in New York. New York is the great city. It's one of the great places of the world, but I really have no intention of running for mayor. Thank you.
But you definitely are a political person, whether you run for office, by what everything that you say and do points in that direction.
When I see a total ripoff of this country by Japan, where they literally have no defense budget, where we have to borrow money from them in order to get them oil and defend the Persian Gulf, where most of the oil goes to Japan and other countries, not us. We get 4% of our oil. When I see Kuwait, a total ripoff, we're bringing the Bridgeton. You remember the Bridgeton? Their oil minister sat back and he laughed at how much money he's going to make. Why aren't we getting some of that money? Why aren't we getting it? They're taking in billions and billions of dollars, and we can't even land a helicopter on Kuwaiti soil. You tell me that's right. Saudi Arabia, they wouldn't even be there except for us. And in Saudi Arabia, we couldn't even use their minesweepers, Phil. You know it. We said, could we use your minesweepers? Ours are old, outdated, not worth a damn. They said, no, you can't use our minesweepers to protect the Persian Gulf. I mean, it's a disgrace. What's going on?
Beyond that, in terms of reaching out and being inclusive, he's done that too. And created for many people a comfort zone when I ran for the presidency in 84 and 88. And many others thought it was either laughable or something to avoid. He came to our business meeting here in New York because he has this sense of the curious and a will to risk to make things better. And so aside from all of his style and his pizzazz, he's a serious person who is an effective builder of building with a builder of people. Last year he was a part of our workshop, of our panel workshop on what are the challenges and opportunities. And so this, a year later, Donald Trump, for a few minutes, challenges and opportunities to embrace the underserved communities. Donald Trump.
Well, it is an honor to be here, and I was with Jesse last year, and we had a lot of fun, and it was a little different. We had a real panel where you asked questions and everything, and we didn't do so much speaking, so I'm going to get off here very quickly because I want to hear some questions. Jesse started off by saying most of the wealth in this country is in the hands of a few. Like myself, is that a bad thing? What's wrong with that, Jesse? But he did have an expression last year, and I was just telling Roger, he had an expression last year, the wall on wall must fall. And you haven't used it today, and I'm very disappointed in this, Jesse, because I thought it was a great expression. And I heard the expression about 14 times, and then he came to me at the end of the session, and he said, listen, I want some office space in your building on Wall Street, because the wall on wall will fall. And I said, it's okay, Jesse, I'll make a good deal with you. I'll get you some space. You'll pay about $40 a foot. And he said, no, I don't want to pay 40. I said, how about 30? No. It was the cheapest deal I ever made in the history of 40 Wall Street. Is that right? He got it for nothing. He's a very tough negotiator. We know that, right? Nah, he's a terrific guy. We love him, and I'm here for him. And the snow came, and I said, gee, nobody's going to show up, and look at this place, it's packed. And if you do want to run for president, you see this guy, you're 3-0. And when he left Bush, you know what happened to Bush's last campaign, folks? It wasn't very pretty. And now we have President Clinton, who's coming tonight. And I guess you like President Clinton very much, right, Jesse? Huh? Stand up and say it, Jesse. Well, I'll just say a few words. I mean, Wall Street and New York City and this whole region is doing unbelievably well. I'm building a job on the west side, which is the largest job ever approved by the New York City Planning Commission. You see it going up along the West Side Highway. It's almost 10 million square feet. It's 18 buildings, and it's really going to be something. We're building a building that you probably heard of recently. It's the tallest residential tower anywhere in the world. It's 90 stories. People aren't happy about the fact that I'm building a 90-story building in New York City, but it's an as-of-right. It's called an as-of-right building, meaning you can do it by zoning, and it's going to be truly magnificent, right directly across from the United Nations. We just bought the General Motors building. We just completed Trump International Hotel and Tower, which just yesterday got the Mobile 5-Star Award. Only 4 in the country got it for its whatever it is, and it's been a tremendous success. We're doing a lot of other things, and I will tell you, a large percentage of the people, and especially in construction, that are building these great jobs are black and minorities, and I'm very proud of it. We have close to 25%, and I think the number's going up, and they do a great job. There are no better builders than we have in New York, and a big percentage of that is black and minority folks. So I just want to thank everybody in the room for being here. I look forward to some questions. And then I don't know how we're ever going to leave this building today, because if you look outside, it is terrible. But we'll figure a way. There's always a way. And thank you, Jesse, and congratulations.
I'd like to call our next witness, Donald Trump, who certainly needs no introduction. Your fame and reputation precede you, Donald. We're very happy to have you here. We know you to be very frank and outspoken. And you've had extensive experience, not only in large real estate developments, but also in sports and gaming and entertainment industries. And I'm glad you're able to make it here this morning, and appreciate your waiting and being so patient as you have been. So we welcome you, especially to listen and learn from your experiences, as we know you've been very much involved in regard to this credit crunch that we have before our nation today. So you may proceed in any way that's comfortable with you.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. So this tax act was just an absolute catastrophe for the country, for the real estate industry, and I really hope that something can be done, as Congressman Thomas recently said, that something can be done to change at least parts of it, because it has taken all incentive away from investing in real estate. And real estate really means so many jobs. I mean, you have a city called New York City. You have a city, Boston. You have other cities and so many other cities. But I can tell you from very personal knowledge, New York City has virtually no construction right now. And we're not only talking about office buildings, of which there are many. We're talking about housing, moderate income housing, low income housing, even high income housing, where you create jobs. You create so many other things. They buy carpet. They buy furniture, they buy refrigerators, they buy other things that fuel the economy. And incentive has to be put back into the construction of things that are needed, such as housing of all kinds. I heard this morning that we've had the lowest number of houses built in terms of the housing since 1946 or 1947. And that's not much of a tribute to this group of folks that are representing the country, unfortunately. I feel I feel very badly about it. Everybody feels very badly about it. The fact is that the one word that nobody up on the panel has mentioned is the word depression. And I truly feel that this country right now is in a depression. It's not a recession. People are kidding themselves if they think it's a recession. You look at what's happening in the automobile business and in the retailing business. The retailing business in any part of the country virtually is a total disaster.
It's a pleasure to meet you, Mr. Trump. I've never really heard you in terms of your professional expertise. I've only read about you in terms of other activities, and I have to say that I admire you in terms of your professional expertise. I have been fighting the 1986 tax bill ever since it was passed. I wish I had a lot of questions for you, but you already said everything for me that needed to be said. I just wanted to put it in the context of where we are. A relatively simple change to correct a serious error in the 86 tax bill could go a long way, structurally, but I think also psychologically, to indicate that we are doing something, we do understand the problem, and we are responding.
Thank you, Congressman.
And I thank you for your testimony.
It's a shame, Congressman, that this very powerful and important industry doesn't have a better lobby, because I watch things being lobbied that should never be passed, and they get passed, and I look at things like this, and as you say, it's on a back burner, and you know how important it is. And the real estate industry is a group of thousands of people, some wealthy, some not wealthy, most not very wealthy right now. And I will tell you, they have absolutely the most pathetic lobby in the history of the United States Congress. It is so bad. And I don't know how many of these people behind me are lobbyists, but they're not doing a very good job, I can tell you that.
I just tell the gentleman that if he would appear before the committee or several others like him, they wouldn't need lobbyists.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
If there would be a poster boy to represent America at the turn of the millennium, the celebration of celebrity, the rich almost reeking of prosperity, continuing proof that the American dream exists, then Donald Trump's picture might best fill the frame. His name is on buildings, his face is in magazines and newspapers. Both are on the covers of 3 previous books, all bestsellers, and now he's coming out with a 4th. But this time, he's not talking only about his prowess to make millions of dollars. Now, he is also talking about his hope to win millions of voters. That's right. New York City developer Donald Trump says he wants to be President of the United States.
I'm absolutely serious about conceivably running for the office of president. And if I run and if I won, I think I'd be a really good president.
Prepared to take that roll out of your pocket, take the rubber band off, and start counting out real money?
Well, as I've said, I'd be prepared to spend $100 million on the race if necessary.
Spending that money would be as easy as pounding a nail. He is worth an estimated $1.5 billion.
They go with the mirror and then the splash.
He inherited a small fortune from his father, himself a builder.
How do you like the way it came out, the curtain? Great.
But the son has taken developing and his assets to heights taller and more dazzling than any skyscraper.
Good detail.
But his life wasn't so great a few years ago when he was $900 million in personal debt and teetering on the brink of oblivion.
And now my company's much bigger, much stronger, much more powerful than it ever was before. Because at certain times when it seemed that there was just no hope, those are the times that turned out to be the best for me, because I don't give up. Come on, let's go.
Where Trump was on the go to last month was California for 2 days.
Very nice group.
He's beginning his so-called presidential exploratory trip. Traveling as a president on Air Force One could be a downgrade. He has masterpieces in the back and a master bedroom up front. We tagged along to see if he was serious or just showing off. Day 1 had 3 events. First, a press conference.
Well, I'm here for a number of reasons. Tomorrow, as you know, there's a big speech at the arena. And I guess we have about 20,000 people for that. And then tonight we're doing Jay Leno.
Trump seemed not to mind sharing the spotlight with his girlfriend at the time, a European model named Melania Knauss. Next on the campaign trail, the pre-taping of that Leno show.
And our guest tonight, the next president of the United States, Donald Trump.
He'll tease me, there's no question about it. He historically has. He always will.
They say a job like president requires a big ego. Now, do you think you can handle it?
I'm not sure my ego is big enough. That's one of the things which I can...
Really? Can I write that down?
You can write it.
Last on Trump's day calendar, a meeting with the group he must win over to even make a run at the presidency. California Reform Party loyalists. Political consultant Scott Reed explains.
The Reform Party was really created back in 1992 when Ross Perot saw a niche, and he saw that the people were disgusted with the direction of the country. And Donald Trump now has stepped back and recognized that he wants to be a major influence in national politics, and he's decided to go out and attempt to become the nominee.
Well, it's a great honor to be here. It's a great honor that so many folks have shown up. Tomorrow, and you're all invited as my guest, I'm giving a little speech, and I just heard that 21,000 people are showing up, so I don't know.
The way Trump looks at it, he's at least better than everyone else in the race.
George W. Bush.
Well, so far I've been very, very saddened by the fact that he certainly doesn't seem like Albert Einstein.
Do you think he'd been governor if his father had not been president?
No.
The late Sam Rayburn of Texas was quoted once as saying of the people Lyndon Johnson picked around him, "I'd feel better if they'd at least run for sheriff one time in their life." You understand the spirit and the essence of that?
Sure, I do, but I know the politicians, and I know how, hey, look, I know politicians. I know politicians perhaps better than you know politicians, and you interview them all the time. I deal with them all the time, at almost every level.
Well, certainly you've given them more money than I have.
I've given them a lot of money, and they come to my office, and they ask for a lot of money, and within the system, I give it. And, I mean, I know these folks well, and some are dumber than a rock. And I know who they are. I know the smart ones. I know the not so smart ones. And I know that I can do a very good job.
Part of what Donald Trump is about is selling the name. And how better to sell the name than to run for president? Am I wrong about that?
I can understand it, Dan, and I'm not holding you. I haven't changed my opinion of you at all by you saying that. But the fact is that I'm very serious about it. I'm looking at it very seriously. And I wouldn't be surprised if I said yes.
Let's talk about your values. What are your values?
Well, I think I'm a great father. I have fantastic children, 4 great children. And I believe in family. I believe in marriage. I believe in religion.
You said you value family?
I do value family. In fact, I think the biggest disappointment was that I haven't had the kind of marriage that I had hoped I would.
How you doing, fellas? How you doing, fellas?
It should not be surprising that Trump has some popularity with the kind of people building his newest skyscraper, blue-collar working men. They enjoy the Donald, acting like the Don.
How you doing, everybody? Hey, fellas.
Mr. Trump, please, thank you. Nice.
Trump says he will announce a decision in February. Meanwhile, he's living the life of the man who has everything. He may no longer be dancing with Melania. They broke up just a few days ago, but his flirtation with the public and the presidency is far from over.
Whether or not some of the so-called Trump magic in terms of real estate, in terms of hotels, in terms of everything, translate into votes, I don't know. Maybe it doesn't. Maybe people will pay me $10 million to live in a building that I built, but they won't pay me 2 cents to press a lever saying Trump for president. That's possible.
Give us your assessment. Is there a way out?
The war is a total disaster. It's a catastrophe, nothing less. It is such a shame that this took place. In fact, I gained a lot of respect for our current president's father by the fact that he had the sense not to go into Iraq. He won the war and then said, let's not go the rest of the way, and he turned out to be right. And Saddam Hussein, whether they like him or didn't like him, he hated terrorists. He'd shoot and kill terrorists. When terrorists came into this country, which he did control and he did dominate, he would kill terrorists. Now it's a breeding ground for terrorists. So, look, the war is a total catastrophe.
Who do you blame?
And they have a civil war going on.
Who do you blame?
Well, there's only one person you can blame, and that's our current president. I mean, obviously, Rumsfeld was a disaster, and other people that are giving him advice have been a disaster. And Condoleezza Rice, who's a lovely woman, but she never makes a deal. She doesn't make deals. She waves. She gets off the plane. She waves. She sits down with some dictator, 45-degree angle. They do the camera shot. She waves again. She gets back on the plane. She waves. No deal ever happens. So, I mean,
You got to close a deal at some point.
You got to make deals. The world is dying to make deals, and we don't have the right people doing it.
The Vice President, Dick Cheney.
Well, he's obviously a very hawkish guy on the war. He said the war was going fantastically just a few months ago, and, you know, it's just very sad. I don't know if they're bad people. I don't know what's going on. I just know that they got us into a mess, the likes of which this country has probably never seen. It's one of the great catastrophes of all time, and perhaps even worse, the rest of the world hates us. You go throughout Europe. I travel. I do deals all over the world. The Europeans hate us. You go to Germany. You go to England. You go to places that, you know, we didn't have problems with. They all hate the Americans because of what's happened. We had a chance after September 11th to be the most popular, for the first time ever, to be the most popular nation on earth, and we blew it. Everybody, for the first time, people felt sympathy. I'm not saying it's a great thing to have sympathy in terms of yourself, but for the first time they felt a sympathy and a love for this country because of what happened.
and we blew it.
How does the United States get out of this situation? Is there a,
How do they get out? You know how they get out? They get out. That's how they get out. Declare victory and leave. Because I'll tell you, this country is just going to get further bogged down. They're in a civil war over there, Wolf. There's nothing that we're going to be able to do with a civil war. They are in a major civil war, and it's going to go to Iran, and it's going to go to other countries. They are in the midst of a major civil war, and there's nothing. And by the way, we're keeping the lid on a little bit, but the day we leave anyway, it's all going to blow up. You know, nobody talks about the soldiers that are coming back with no arms and no legs. And I saw at Mar-a-Lago on Mondays, I make Mar-a-Lago my club that you know about.
In Palm Beach.
I make that twice now. On a Monday, I let returning Iraqi injured soldiers come to the premises. The most beautiful people I've ever seen. But they're missing arms and legs. They're with their wives. Sometimes they're with their girlfriends. And the tears are coming down the faces of these people. I mean, the thousands and maybe hundreds of thousands. And the Iraqis that have been just maimed and killed. This war is a horrible thing. Now, President Bush says he's religious. And yet 400,000 people, the way I count it, have died. And probably millions have been badly maimed and injured. What's going on? What's going on? And the day we pull out, it's going to explode. We're keeping the lid on a little bit. It's still a catastrophe. But the day we pull out, because they're in a civil war, whether we want to admit it or not, they're in a civil war.
What do you think of some of these scandals that are unfolding in Washington right now? As we speak, the Attorney General is under fire, Alberto Gonzales. What do you make of this as an executive trying to watch an administration?
Look, everything in Washington has been a lie. Weapons of mass destruction was a total lie. It was a way of attacking Iraq, which he thought was going to be easy, and it turned out to be the exact opposite of easy. He reads 60 books a year. He reads a book a week. Do you think the president reads a book a week? I don't think so. He doesn't watch television. Now, one thing I know is that when I'm on television, I watch, or I try. Because you do. Your own ego says, you know, let's watch. Let's see whether it's good or bad. You want to watch, right? He doesn't watch television. So he's on television being interviewed by you or somebody else. He doesn't watch. Does anybody really believe that? Now they're doing this whole scandal with the U.S. attorneys. Now they're finding emails. And it's proven to be a lie. Everything's a lie. It's all a big lie.
Donald Trump is a billionaire, a real estate mogul, and a television star. But does he really want to add President of the United States to his resume? A lot of people would like him to. Please, let's find out, and please welcome my friend, Donald Trump. We're so happy to have you. Whenever you're on with us, we're very happy.
Oh, we love it.
Okay, so I'm going to take you at your word that you have not decided yet when you're going to run, but you're thinking about it, and you've expressed some of your views, which are controversial, and in many ways, yeah, but
not to her.
Well, not to her. Okay, you're a Republican, but let's say that you do decide in the spring, right? And your ideas resonate so much. On the other hand, you know, we saw Newt Gingrich apologizing for his marriages and divorces. You've had 3 marriages, 2 sort of uncomfortable divorces. Do you think that the...
not really. They were very comfortable.
Right. We won't review all that. Do you think that the country, that would bother anybody?
I think the country is doing so badly, they want somebody that's going to help it. I think the country is never been in a position like it is right now. It's being ripped off by every nation, every intelligent nation in the world, whether it's China. They're taking our jobs, they're making all our product, and then they loan us back the money, we pay them interest.
That is
whether
crazy.
It's OPEC, which is, I mean, they're having a field day right now. How about the Arab League?
They say, we want you to go in and attack Libya. These are the wealthiest countries in the world. Why aren't they paying us?
Okay,
Why
so
aren't
then they changed their minds also. But you didn't answer my question.
No, I did answer your question. I really think
it won't
people...
matter?
I think maybe 10 years ago it would have mattered, 5 years ago. The fact is, I think people want somebody now that's going to protect them and protect this country, because we're not going to be a great country for long if we keep going the way we're going right now.
If you...
When we have... Barbara... When we have France leading the charge, okay? France, this is our new leader. By the way, they led for about 2 hours. After that, nobody's seen them. I don't know if you know that or not.
Geographically, so they should. Let me just ask a follow-up question to that.
Lead is the point.
Let me just ask a follow-up question to that. Let's say you run. You've given a lot of thought for this. Who would you like as your vice president? Possibly Sarah Palin?
Well, I think it's far too early even to discuss that. I'm going to make a decision sometime prior to June. I'm thinking about it very strongly. I think I'd do a really good job. I think I'd protect this country like it's not being protected. You know, it's funny. So many of the things I say, now politicians are saying, hey, that's right. Why don't we, why aren't they paying us? If you look at North Korea, South Korea, we're protecting South Korea. They're making a fortune. Let's call it hundreds of billions of dollars of profit on us. We have 25,000 soldiers over there protecting them. They don't pay us. Why aren't they paying us?
You've been treating this like a business.
No, a business with heart.
Okay.
Believe me, there's a lot of heart. It's a business, but it's also a business with heart. We will destroy this country. It won't be a war. If the economics of this country keep going the way they're going, we're not going to have a country.
You're kind of a social liberal, Donald. You know, you're a social liberal. Could you actually get the base to vote for you in the primary?
Well, every poll is saying that I'm the one that does the best. They're doing polls.
They actually have you a higher approval rating than Mitt Romney, Tim Pawlenty, John Boehner. But out of those, if you're thinking of competition within the party to get the nomination, really your biggest competition will be, should you get the nomination, President Obama.
Well, I was the only one. A CNN poll just came out, as you probably saw, and I was the only one that was essentially tied with Obama. Everyone was 10 and 15 points down. So, we'll see. I haven't made a decision. I'll be making a decision, and I will do a good job if I decide yes and if I win.
Okay.
I just was wondering, because you were talking about how all these countries have been doing this. You would admit that this has sort of been business as usual for the last 30 years. I mean, we have. This is not because it's nothing new. This has been going on. So you're saying you would come in and stop that practice?
But it's never been as bad as it is now. We've never had $1.6 trillion in deficits.
It was as bad when George Bush left office. So he was the one who left this.
You're right.
Who left this?
Excuse me. I'm a Republican. George Bush, he gave us Obama. I'm not a big fan of George Bush. I'm not a fan of Obamacare.
Let's not talk about who gave who,
I know,
baby,
Whoopi.
Because
I don't think I'm going to get Whoopi's vote.
If you did, let me just ask, if you did beat...
And she likes me. She even put me in her movies.
I was just going to say.
She put me in her movies, right? A long time ago. And how much did I charge? Nothing.
Like they say in the
It was a freebie.
If you did beat Obama, though,
it's just
would you say you're fired to him if you did beat him in the general election?
I don't want to trivialize it. We have this show that turned out to be such a success, and maybe that's why I'm sitting here, partially because people have gotten to know me. For the next 4 weeks, actually. It goes on for a period of time, but this week, I love it.
You love it.
I do
so
love
we should watch it. But I really want to get to this, the roast that was on Comedy Central.
Wow.
This roast, Donald was so raunchy, and you're not known for being raunchy. I mean, you had Snoop on stage, smoking. It was a lot of sexual humor. How in the world did you... It was for charity,
and
but...
how were the ratings?
It was the best ratings they ever got.
Okay.
It was the highest that they ever got.
I have to explain this. I have to explain. I did it for a very specific... I would never have done it in a million years, because I've seen the roast. They're brutal. And this was more brutal than any of them. I did it because they paid me a lot of money, and I gave it all to charity. So I said to myself, am I going to sit there for an hour and be just horribly abused, and then go home and hand a lot of money to different AIDS research and lots of great charities? Or am I going to sit home, watch television, and not give anything? And I decided to sit. And I was actually happy with it. I was happy with how well it did. It was their most successful show.
What do you think about the situation
Tell me, how did it feel like when they really attack you and they do a hair joke?
Your daughter was in the
hair
audience.
I'm used to. Excuse me, you attack my hair all the time. I got used to. You were worse than they were.
I stopped.
No, you were worse than they were.
Do you mind when people attack your hair?
No.
Is there any,
and you know what, Barbara? You know what? Look,
it's real.
It's really mine. You know, it's like
baby. We've gone through a few things together over the years.
She is very sexy, I want to tell you.
He knows how to get to me. Is there anything that you are insecure about?
that you want to say on TV?
I don't want to say. You know, I probably do. I don't want to give it up. Let somebody figure it out someday.
That's right.
Right?
Don't tell them.
I hate,
Don't give ammunition to
on
the
television,
enemy.
the reason we don't have the big stars like they used to with Clark Gable and all, you know, Clark Gable didn't go on like your show and say, I'm an alcoholic, I'm this. Now they get on, they cry, they're alcoholics, they're this, they're drug addicts, and you say, huh, they're just like everyone else. So if I do have an insecurity, I'm not talking.
Listen, Donald, so far, there's nothing you haven't been successful at. You're a great character. You're a great friend of ours. We don't know whether you should be president, but we do know that you will enjoy watching.
But you do admit I'd be a great president.
You have possibilities.
Barbara, don't blow it.
So, the Celebrity Apprentice. You want to say something else? Besides that? No.
But I don't think you're a real Republican.
I'm a real Republican.
I think you're...
The Apprentice is Sunday nights. Check your local listings. He's always wonderful to watch. We'll be right back.
Huge night last night. Did you have any idea that you were going to win as big as you did?
Well, I felt good. I mean, Mississippi, I was there 3 or 4 times, and it was like a love fest, and so I felt very good about it. Michigan has been great. It's been great for me for a long time. I have so many friends there, and I had no idea it would be that big.
Do you think it's the message on trade, particularly in Michigan, that was effective? Because we see Sanders winning as well there with a very similar message on trade.
I think they want strength. I think they want military. I think they want to take care of vets. I think they hate Obamacare. But I would say ultimately it's about jobs and the economy. And, you know, Michigan's been stripped. You look at those empty factories all over the place, and nobody hits that message better than me. I'm going to take care of it. I'm going to stop it. I'm going to stop the craziness that's going on. If you look at what's happening, even today, I mean, we're just shipping company after company after company is leaving this country and leaving jobs behind, and I'm going to get it stopped. And I think we just have better policies. The country is sick and tired of what they're seeing. The country is sick and tired of these politicians that talk, and it's all talk, no action, and they're tired of it, Anderson.
You've had a lot of money thrown against you just these last couple of weeks.
There's never been anything like it.
This whole never Trump movement, is it dead, do you think?
Well, I think it's mortally wounded. I do think it's mortally wounded. Look, Marco had a very rough night. He got no delegates. He got nothing. And that was a very, very bad night. And, you know, when people have hit me in this, if you watch, and it's been the story of my life, I better knock on wood, but everybody that's hit me has gone down. They all came at me. Perry came at me. I could go through. Lindsey Graham came at me. Bush came at me. Every one of them came at me. And every one of them that's come at me has gone down. And wouldn't it be nice to have that happen with our country, where we can very simply win again?
So what do you think was Rubio's demise?
I think he tried to be Don Rickles, frankly. You know, he wanted to be Don Rickles, and he's not Don Rickles. And it took me by surprise. I mean, I'm standing at one of the debates, and all of a sudden he got nasty. And he was very nasty.
Did he get under your skin?
No, he didn't. And nobody gets under my skin. I mean, you have to handle it. But he was really rude. And in fact, for a while, I wasn't even sure if what I was seeing was right. Then he had a horrible debate with Chris Christie where he folded. I mean, he totally, choked. And you know the expression, once a choker, always a choker.
Do you think going after you, with jokes, with humor, with insults, that took him off his message?
I think so. He wasn't really joking. I mean, he was insulting. And, made up insults and nasty insults.
And it weakened him, you think, in the long term?
It turned out to. I didn't know it would. I mean, I think I hit him very hard. I probably hit him much harder. But maybe for me it's more natural. It wasn't natural for him, and took him off his game. Amazing. I've never seen anything like it. And he went from being, from doing pretty good to now he's at the bottom of the pack.
I want to ask you about Cruz in a minute, but just in a big picture, have you given much thought to how you want to define the GOP? I mean, you will be not only the nominee, you will be the standard bearer for the Republican Party. How do you want to redefine the GOP?
Okay, well, I think the biggest story in all of politics all over the world right now, I've been on the cover of Time magazine 4 times in the last short number of months. I mean, because of what's happening. Millions of people are going to the polls, more people than did 4 years ago, and did ever. By the way, ever. You report on it. You don't report on it even as big as it should, but millions of people. It's the biggest story. And people come up to me, Mr. Trump, when I'm signing autographs or I'm shaking hands, Mr. Trump, 50 years old, 60 years old, I've never voted before, but I'm so proud to be voting. I've never wanted to vote.
So you want a more populist GOP?
No. I'll tell you what. I'm a conservative person. I don't think the labels matter. You know, they say he is not. Jeb Bush used to say he is not a conservative. Okay, he used to go, he is not a conservative. I say, what difference does it make? I mean, who cares? I have very conservative views. But one view that probably isn't considered conservative, but it is smart trade. I want smart trade.
Right,
I don't
your
want
position
free
is
trade.
actually similar to Bernie Sanders in some way. I mean, you're both sort of
Except
critical
I
of
can do
NAFTA.
something about it. The difference between Sanders and I watched him recently, and he's right about one thing. The world is ripping us off on trade. It's been a horrible thing. It's been a horrible, horrible experiment. I've been against it for years, Anderson. You know, if you look back, I've been against it. In fact, your friend Wolf Blitzer actually did a tape of his interviews with me from like 15, 17 years ago, and I was saying the same thing. A little bit different nations, like Japan was really ripping.
But your position is pretty un-Republican. I mean, Larry Kudlow, who is positive about your corporate tax policy, he's critical of you on trade.
Yeah.
He says that essentially it's going to be raising prices for people on consumer goods, on electronics, on cars, on other items, and it's essentially a tax on people who can't afford it.
No, I've heard Larry, and let me just tell you what's going to happen from a practical standpoint, from a negotiating standpoint. The world is ripping us off because of manipulation, monetary manipulation, devaluations, okay? They are brilliant. The greatest player of them all is China. Nobody has ever played the valuation game with their currency better. It's currency devaluation than China. China is a grandmaster. Japan is doing very well, but some of these countries are just absolute masters at it. When we start getting tough and they think that we're serious, and I'm totally serious. I'd put a tax on in 2 seconds.
You've talked about a 45% tax
I've talked about different
goods.
taxes. I've also said, I didn't say I was going to put it, I said use it as a negotiating tool, and I would if we couldn't make the right deal.
But that would raise prices for consumer goods.
China just devalued their currency recently more than they have at any time for more than 2 decades. This was like shocking. And the only reason they did it is because we're weak and we have no leadership. It makes it impossible for our companies to compete with Chinese companies and China generally, okay? It makes it absolutely impossible. The threat of me doing this, for instance, the threat of doing it against Japan or China, you tell Japan, by the way, when your cars come in, you're going to have to pay a 35% tax. I use 35%. I only use 45% if somebody's really egregious, and of course now you have many people that are really egregious. But
so you're seeing this as a negotiation tactic?
And you know what's going to happen? When they see that we're not playing games, that we'll really do it, because I would do it in a heartbeat. I'd love to do it. When they see that we're not playing games, they're going to stop playing with their currencies, and they're going to stop taking our jobs to the extent that they're taking them right now.
Negative favorability ratings worry you?
I don't think so. I mean, I've turned a lot of them around, and as you know, in North Carolina it was negative, and now it's like tremendously positive. And when people hear what I say about the vets and how strong my commitment is to the vets, they've been treated so badly, and to the border, which is just horrible. I mean, every time people listen to me, all of a sudden it becomes very favorable. A good example would be North Carolina, where it's so positive. I haven't seen that, but I think generally speaking, we're doing very well, and certainly we're doing well in the ABC Washington Post poll and every other poll that I've seen in the last couple of weeks.
So you think you can turn around, because a lot of people say, look, those kind of unfavorability ratings, that does not bode well. You think you can turn that around?
I don't know. I mean, who knows? I'm doing this for the good of the country. Somebody has to do it. Politicians are never going to turn this country around. Our country's a mess. The politicians are going to destroy this country. They're weak and they're ineffective, and they're controlled by the lobbyists and the special interests. So, well, I have no idea.
You talk about the lobbyists and the special interests, though. You and I talked last time. You've given a lot of money to politicians over the years. You give to Democrats, you give to Republicans. Aren't you part of the problem?
I would, absolutely, 100%. Absolutely. I was on the other side. They will do whatever I want up until you decide to run.
So
they
isn't
will
that hypocritical to say, oh, this is a problem, but I'm going to make the most of this problem?
It's called playing the game. I was a businessman. I made a fortune. I made a lot of money. I posted over $10 billion.
So in order to make money, it's okay to play the game?
Well, it's called your life. I mean, I'm a businessman, and I contribute to people, and they treat me nicely and everything else. And
so how do you change that? How do you change that culture of
I understand
money
the
for
culture.
access?
Look, I just read an article where Bush is meeting with all these lobbyists in Washington, has a meeting with all these lobbyists, every one of those lobbyists that gives money, they expect something for it. And that's a bad thing.
Don't
that's
you
a
have
bad
lobbyists,
thing.
though?
Absolutely. I've had lobbyists, and I've had some very good ones. They could do anything. They can take a politician and have them jump off this ledge.
Can you actually change that culture of corruption?
Well, you can in the sense that the top person can't be bought. I'm worth far too much money. I don't need anybody's money. I'm not running with anybody's money. I'm spending my own money. But the lobbyists they totally control these politicians. Just take a look. In one of the articles, very recently, I see Bush with the lobbyists, and he's sitting there with all of these people. They're totally telling him what to do, like a little puppet. And the same with Hillary, and the same with everybody else. Now, when I'm in business, I'm part of that game. When I'm in this, I now know when somebody
comes. Can you jump back and forth, though? I mean, can
you
really be a guy who says,
I
"Look,
am able to do that."
That's
very
not
easily.
hypocritical.
Not at all. Look, I've made a lot of money. A lot.
I've heard.
And I don't need money. And I don't need money to run. I don't need $5,000 here, $10,000. These guys are desperate for money. I don't need it. I'm going to do what's right for the country.
Who'd run your business if you're president?
My children and executives. I have very good executives and great children. They're very good.
Do you have the temperament to be president? That's the question that Jeb Bush was really raising about the divisiveness, about the language. I mean, you have a no prisoners approach. Somebody attacks you.
No, I don't have that. I'm very different than you would think. Right now I'm fighting because I'm #1 in the polls by far, and I'm being attacked on all sides. When you're attacked, you have to, in my opinion,
you're going to be attacked all the time.
Excuse me. In my opinion, yeah, but this isn't the same thing. In my opinion, when attacked, you have to, defend and attack back, okay? I'm being attacked by certain people. Actually, Bush, I think he's probably a nice guy. I don't think he has the temperament. And by that, he is a nice guy, but he doesn't have the temperament. You know why? He's too low-key. He's too laid back. Can you imagine Bush negotiating with China? You want to talk about temperament? I'll introduce you to the Chinese. They have temperament. But can you imagine Bush negotiating trade deals with China?
His brother, George W. Bush, when he was running, said that he would be a uniter, not a divider. What would you be?
I think I'd be a great uniter. We're not united now. We have a president that, whether people love him or hate him, the world is a mess. Hillary Clinton, by the way, was the worst Secretary of State in the history of this country, in my opinion. But we have a president right now, doesn't get along with Russia, doesn't get along with anybody. I mean, the only one he gets along with is Iran, and even that's sort of very suspect because they want to blow everybody up.
Back in 2007 or 2008, I saw a quote on Wolf Blitzer. You said to him that Hillary Clinton surrounds herself with smart people and she'd probably be a good negotiator against Iran.
Maybe she could be, but I don't think so. I know her very well. And again, when I'm in the private sector and I'm a businessman, I like everybody because I have to deal with these people. I'm not going to go and attack people. I have to deal with these people.
So Donald Trump as president would be a different Donald Trump than we've seen on the campaign trail.
Take a look at the world today. Who do we get along with? We get along with almost nobody. Our allies are decimated. We did a stupid thing in Iraq by going in, and you know that in 2004, I was totally against going in. If you look, July of 2004, Reuters, probably stuff before that, but July of 2004, Bush actually sent a group to talk to me because I was getting a lot of publicity on the fact that we shouldn't be doing Iraq. I am the most militaristic person, but you have to know when to use the military. I said, you will decimate this country and you'll create an imbalance in the Middle East like you've never seen before. That's what's happened. And I said, Iran will take over Iraq and the second largest oil reserves in the world. And I also said, and other groups will take over that'll be worse than Saddam Hussein. You know what happened, Anderson? It's ISIS. They took over the oil.
Have you ever publicly acknowledged making a mistake?
Well, look, everyone makes mistakes. Do I publicly acknowledge making a mistake?
Have you ever said, you know what, I made a mistake, sorry about that?
Yes, I mean, I don't think about it. I don't like to make too many mistakes.